All right, in this video, we're going to have a chat about the most integral and cornerstone components of really what it means to live a fulfilling and happy life. And what we're going to talk about specifically is relationships, honesty, and authenticity, or the lack thereof. We're going to talk about those things because we can understand that all of life is ultimately relationship. Nothing is separate, nothing is independent, everything is all interrelated. So whether that is how we relate to ourselves, how we relate to the external world, or how we relate to other human beings, and the level of honesty, authenticity, and presence that we're able to bring to those relationships will likely determine to a large degree the amount of fulfillment, the amount of pleasure, the amount of energy, a sense of happiness, and feeling rewarded by these relationships. So the real major issue and the real major thing that really diminishes our lack of presence and as such our lack of fulfillment and sense of being rewarded by these things is primarily how we are conditioned by our society, culture, religion, family, upbringing, whatever, to ultimately live a life that is inauthentic, dishonest, and really fake, in other words. And we're really trained and conditioned to not really be honest about our feelings, not really be honest about our thoughts, not really be honest about really what we want to do. Because from the second we are born and we're into this world, we are immediately downloaded and imprinted with a tremendous amount of axioms and assumptions and ideas about the world. Then we go to school, for example, and we are put through this rigid organizing system that is basically created to condition us to work in an industrial factory. Which, if you want to know more about that, just do research on how the modern schools were invented and created in America, and you will see that is specifically and exactly why they were created and why they were organized in the way in which they were organized. And ask, perhaps, are there any similarities to the way a school schedule functions typically and how an industrial sort of assembly line factory kind of position would have functioned, say, back in the early 1920s when the industrial whole thing was really kicking off in America. So anyways, we have this whole thing about our society, our culture, our religion, which basically at a core element invalidates who and what we are, invalidates our feelings, invalidates our natural wholeness, tells us we need to be all of these things, we need to do all of these things, and in and of itself, we're not okay. But if we follow these rules, then we'll be okay. If we act in these certain ways, then our parents will love us. If we don't act in those certain ways, they won't love us. If we act in these ways, we'll make our parents mad. If we act in these ways, we'll make them happy. If we go to school and we act in these ways and we get these grades and we regurgitate the right information at the right time in the right way, then we'll get the grade, then we'll get the validation, then we'll get the approval, then we'll get all of these things. And those are just a couple of examples which we can go on for hours about these different intricacies, but really we just want to illustrate the major point and how this really leads us to not being honest, not being authentic, and as such, not really having any presence for ourselves in our various relationships. So when we're talking about these paradigms or these constructs, primarily what we're referring to is that they're usually all based on control, fear, guilt, and egocentric, illusory posturing. And at the core element, they're mostly all dominated by the shadow. Because the nature of reality, as we said before, is relationship. And as out of relationship, there's what? Just two things. Whether that is a relationship between light and dark, hot and cold, sun and moon, sun and earth and moon, water and fire, male and female. Really, it comes down to relationship. It comes down to two complementary aspects relating together or not. And how that applies to human life is that we live in this kind of bullshit world where everything wants to be up. People only want to be happy, only want to be energized, but never the opposites. People want all of these fake sort of desires, but they only want them on these terms and in these ways and in these sorts of things. But for example, someone wants to be a great artist. Well, often if we study the great artists, there's this thing called the creative process. There's this thing called the creative wave, and it goes up and it goes down. People, for example, especially now in the modern world, sexual issues and sexuality is such a major charged issue. Well, I think pretty much all women understand that it is a cycle, it is a wave. Sometimes it's really up, sometimes it's really down. But for some reason, our culture, our society, and even lots of men can't understand that, it's not always going to be at the top of the mountain all the time. There's going to be ebbs and valleys and waves and peaks and flows and different permutations on how that energy will express. It's not going to be this aggression all the time. It's going to vary. But people can't accept that because, no, it has to be this one thing all the time. Anyways, just a couple of examples of how actually the main reason I was saying that is because we want all light. People want to say, how's your day? Oh, it's so good. Yeah, it's really great. But really, under the scene, there's all this angst, there's all this pain, there's all this suffering. But no, we can't talk about it. No, we can't acknowledge it. No, we can't be present to it because, that's the shadow. That's bad. That's evil. We gotta just kick that off to the side. So as a result, what usually happens and what many human interactions really boil down to, whether that is in entertainment or politics or religion or spirituality or new aginess or consciousness development or sacred communication or any of these different kinds of things, is like basically some facet of these different things, which is you must participate in my construct, where like people are so obsessed with this one thing and that's all they can really see, so they just go around trying to suck everyone else into it. Or people have this kind of us versus them sort of paradigm going on. Or as on an individual level, what people are doing often just distills down to like me, validate me, love me, give me attention, look at how X, Y, or Z I am, look at how enlightened I am, look at how rich I am, look at how attractive I am. And it's all this stuff is just so amplified now because we look at, say, Instagram or look at social media. What is it? Oftentimes it's people just saying, oh my God, look how good my life is. Look how happy I am. Look how fun I am. I've been going to the gym. Look at my abs. Or like people with girls posting pictures of like them doing workouts with their boobs hanging out and like their ass hanging out, like flexing their stomach, getting the right angle, getting the right thing so it all looks the right. It's all just based on what? Like me, validate me. Because what do people say? Oh, like my picture, like my thing. It's literally what we're talking about. Or give me attention. Look at how X I am. Look at how healthy I am. Look at how spiritual I am. Look at how enlightened I am. Look at how rich I am. Look at how sexy I am. Look at how many girls I have. Look at how many men like me. The list goes on and on and on and on. And really, this is just consuming vast amounts of energy, vast amounts of time and resources. But fundamentally, it's all just based on probably something that's not even really real or that authentic or that honest. Or another version of this is the whole I've seen the light thing, which you see this a lot in the whole health thing and even religion thing, where people get really obsessed with their dogma. And a perfect example of this, which I don't think really anyone wants to talk about or anyone really wants to acknowledge or be present to, is all of these quote-unquote health gurus or people who are bloggers or video whatever, and they're really obsessed with their diet or they're really obsessed with their dogma. And the perfect example of this is something that I've seen a lot is, lots of different kinds of women who are like, oh my God, I'm doing this like raw food diet, or I'm doing this extreme diet, or this fast, or this cleanse. I'm so healthy. Look at what I eat. I only eat this. I only eat that. I'm so obsessed with cleansing and detox and purity and this and that. But the truth of the matter is, they either are, or they either were or are bulimic or anorexic or have some kind of legitimate eating disorder. But because we don't want to be present to the pain, suffering, the shadow aspect that's really causing it, we're just going, oh my God, I'm so healthy. I just need a detox. I just need to lose this. I'm just deficient in this mineral or that mineral and all of these things. But really, how true or authentic or really honest is that? And that's just one example which is really ubiquitous. Or even people who are ex-drug addicts, whether that is meth or heroin or whatever, and all of a sudden, maybe now they're fruitarians, or maybe now they're on this insanely extreme, rigid path, and they're like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. This is the best thing. Everyone has to do it. Everyone needs to only eat these things because this is the best. Or people who, are really, 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 really obsessed with yoga. But what were they obsessed with before? Drugs, alcohol. So really they're taking their addiction and just trying to dress it up and put better clothing on it without really actually being present to the real thing that's going on. Because why? Well, we can't. We're conditioned to not be honest, to not be real, to not be present to what is actually happening. And really, the major issue with that is, for one, it's all mostly fake and just controlled by the shadow, but it's completely just not even necessarily present. And on just a purely physical level, it's really all mostly adrenaline based. Because all this sort of contrived construct stuff, ego posturing, control, fear, guilt, validation, all these programs, it's all running on adrenaline all the time. It takes a tremendous amount of energy to uphold and keep that information and to keep that stuff in reality. It takes a lot of energy, a lot of work, a lot of dedication, a lot of focus, and that just squanders people's resources. And usually it sets up this cycle of being addicted to adrenaline. And the thing is, we don't realize it, because perhaps there's this thing called dose dependence, where we have a certain amount of something, and for a while that really worked, and then after a while we take that dose and we just feel normal. We don't feel up, we don't feel down, we feel normal. But if we don't get that dose, then we feel down. So in order to feel normal, we need to get our dose. And when we look at how the mind works and how the ego works and how personality things work, we can see a pretty strong connection between those two things. So people get really sucked into extreme dogmas or extreme things, and they think, oh my God, I feel so good. I have so much energy. I don't need to sleep as much. I don't need to eat as much. I'm losing weight. All this stuff is happening. It's like, well, maybe it's just depletion. Maybe your body is operating in this hyper-aroused state where you're just pumping adrenaline all the time. People say, oh, I'm so blissed out. I'm so feeling good. Well, maybe it's just stress hormones. But the thing is once we go so far down a certain path, what happens is things behind us start to close up. So we forget our other options. We forget where we have been and where we might be able to go. And we just get sort of stuck in this little dark hallway, not realizing that, oh, maybe I could feel differently. Maybe, what does it feel like to not be adrenalized? What does it feel like to not have all of this stuff be a burden? What does it feel like to actually be honest or be relaxed or be present? Who knows? Because we're so addicted to the adrenaline. Because this level of adrenaline feels normal. So anything outside of that is going to be abnormal or weird or scary or different or outside of our paradigm. So we're just probably not going to do it. So when I'm talking about, oh, there's no real presence or honesty or any of these things, I don't mean that in some vague, esoteric way. I mean literally, if we are not present to what is or present to what's happening in this physical world, how honest can we be? How authentic can we actually be? Because it's real easy to really make these terms esoteric or make them seem really weird or far out, but it's actually quite simple, quite basic, quite really easy. Easy to see, maybe not easy to practice, but that's part of the real magic of it. So if we don't have any real presence to what is or what is actually happening or the dynamic process of energy moving, which is reality, then how honest or authentic can we actually be? And then if we're not very honest or authentic, how can we necessarily expect that we're going to be happy, that we're going to be fulfilled, that we're going to feel calm, that we're going to have energy, that we're going to be creative and make things happen and have a life that makes us feel good? Because, when people are operating out of this fear and control and the guilt and all these things, it's really indicating issues with survival. Because when all this stuff is kicking off, it means there's a huge disharmony between the organism and the environment. So really, ultimate question here, and the ultimate point of the video isn't to be negative. It isn't to point out that things are bad and people are all messed up, because it's really not the point, and who really cares? The point is bringing up this issue and bringing awareness to, yes, light and dark both exist. And perhaps everyone might be a little bit better if we quit all this bullshit posturing and trying to control everything and giving so much of our time and energy to things that just aren't real and will never be real and are ultimately transient and decaying every second of every day. But instead we have to invest all this time and energy trying to control it and trying to make it this thing, which is really just perpetuating the cycle altogether. But ultimately the major question is, well, what if we did live a life where we stopped all these things and we just started being a bit more honest, started being a bit more authentic? Because it isn't this 100% this or 100% that thing. It is, like life, a relationship, a living process, an ebb and a flow and a cycle. So it's not like one day you're like, oh my God, I'm so inauthentic and dishonest. And then tomorrow you're like, oh my God, I'm so conscious and I'm so authentic now. It's not really what it is. It's little steps over the course of time. It's making one simple choice, and that one simple choice leads to other choices. But it really all fundamentally starts right now. So what if we started to live in a way that was a bit more authentic? What would happen? What might change? How might we actually be able to do that? And the bigger question is, what if we had relationships where we just didn't have to do all this crap? Because most of the time we're walking through our life and people are expecting us to participate in these ridiculous modalities. Like me, validate me, give me attention, love me, make me feel this, validate my construct, make me feel better, look how smart I am, look how pretty I am, look how much money I have. People are just asking for this all the time, but what if we just decide, you know what? Maybe I don't really want to play those games anymore. Maybe I just want to actually be present, or just be honest, or just be authentic and just sort of relax and respond to life naturally, rather than out of these weird constructs of trying to control everything out of some illusory idea. What might that do? And how would relationships change if we don't have to do any of that stuff? Maybe we can be with a person or a group of people where we can just be ourselves. We can just be accepted. We don't have to try to impress them. We don't have to try to control them, try to influence them, try to make them better, try to make them different, try to enlighten them, or vice versa. Or try to convert them to seeing the light, or tell them how smart we are, how pretty we are, how much weight we lost, how much money we have. What if there is a space where people can actually just exist and be okay as they are, not need to do any of this crap? How might that change things? And how might that change our relationships to ourselves, the external world, and other people, all in one go? All from really a simple shift in perspective and a simple change of awareness. So we covered a lot of stuff in this video. Hopefully you actually made it to the end and you watched all of the video, because I understand this isn't some like typical YouTube clip where it's like 2 or 3 minutes and everything changes every 20 seconds. It's all happy and light and fun and fast and quick, catering to attention deficit disorder. So that's not really what this is about. It's not really, I don't think that's necessarily a very honest or authentic or necessarily healthy way to condition the mind, but that's what it is. So either way, very thought-provoking, very helpful and impactful things to entertain. Hopefully it's been enjoyable, maybe even been a little bit entertaining and inspiring. If you have any questions or comments, post them below, and I'll talk to you soon.